Hi everyone, and welcome to the book Refuge, and welcome to another historical romance recommendations book. This one is going to be dark historical romances. So this is something that I've more recently gotten into. Obviously I've been reading historical romances for a pretty long time, and when I look back I realized that some of those I read were definitely darker, but I've kind of found a newfound love for it. Like, if you've been with this channel a while, you know I read a lot of Tessa Dare, Julia Quinn, Eloisa James. Those are books that I read a lot of in recent years. They're the one that kind of fuels my passion for historical romance. But things have slowly started to shift for me, and I've been reading some darker historical romances. And I feel like there's just, you know, I love dark romance just in general, but something about historical romance leads so well to it because there's already that like gothic feel about sometimes. I think Jane Eyre, you know, I think of, you know, I don't love it, but like Wuthering Heights. There's just something so angsty about it because of social conventions and things like that. Whereas I think that contemporary dark romance, though obviously we know there's still lots of prejudice about that, I'm meaning more of like, not so much just about people reading it, but in, you know, if people wanted to be into BDSM today or wanted to be into different kinds of sexual relationships, they could do that today with moderately less judgment than if you were, you know, if this was happening in the past. But anyway, oh, one other thing I have to say before we start, there's construction going on right outside my window. I need to get videos filmed, so I'm sorry if you hear some clanging going on. But anyway, without further ado, let's get into some darker historical romances. And I'm really categorizing this based on like angst level, some taboo level, although the things that are considered taboo in a historical romance are like, you know, people are just coming into their own, so things are a little different. But I gotta start with a series that I've just been devouring lately, and the whole series, like, it used to be called like the Highland Pleasure series, but now it's just called the Mackenzie McBrides. But the book particularly that I wanted to pick, all of these books I would consider on the darker side, especially the first one in the series, but I've talked about that one so much recently. I want to give some love to a book that's later on in the series, and that is The Duke's Perfect Wife. This is book 4 in the series. Really, any of the first like 4, you can, okay, once you've read the first book in the series, because you kind of need to read the first one to know what's happening in the rest, but again, they're historical romances, so you can read them out of order. I'm not preaching to you on this. Do what you want. For the story to make more sense to you, I feel like you should have read The Madness of Lord Ian Mackenzie, but maybe you read that book and you didn't know if you wanted to go on. For some reason, you didn't love the rest of the Mackenzie brothers. I don't know how you could not, but this book is about Hart Mackenzie, who is the eldest brother. If you've read the previous books, you know some of the drama that happened in his life. You know that when he was a younger man, he was very into the BDSM lifestyle. Like, it's basically spelled out for you that he owned a club, which he then sold to his mistress. He like gave it to her. I'm going to put these books down because they'll be shiny. And he's kind of into that. But what we is only hinted at is that over 10 years ago, he had a love named Lady Eleanor Ramsey, who he was engaged to and he was madly in love with, and it went wrong. And after that, he did end up marrying someone else, but she died in childbirth with his son. And then he had this mistress. And so he's lived a life still, but he's at the age now where he wants to try again. And there's only one person for him to try again with, and that's Lady Eleanor, and he's working on all these plans to get Eleanor back to town because Eleanor lives with her impoverished father, and she doesn't have much going on for her in life. I mean, she's a very wonderful woman, and she gets sent these blackmail photos of Hart, and they're basically boudoir photos of Hart, which cameras were a pretty new thing. These are pictures that he had taken with his mistress, which Eleanor knew about this lady, so it's not that part of it. It's that he's trying to become prime minister, and if these photos ever got out, it would really ruin things. And so Eleanor comes to town with a proposition for Hart. She asks him to hire her as a detective, basically, to figure out who sent her these photos. And Hart not wanting her to be his detective, but wanting her in his reach, agrees to this and sets her up in his home with her father. And he goes about trying to win her, and she goes about trying to solve this mystery. And it's so fun because these books are so sexy and just with enough angst and darkness, and all of Jennifer Ashley's heroes, all of them are messed up, especially the Mackenzie brothers, because if you've read any of the other books before this, you know they had an extremely abusive father, and Hart's the one who took the brunt of it because he was going to be the Duke. And so his father, well, I would say Ian took the brunt of it, but eventually Ian was in the asylum, and though that was a horrible place for him to be, he was still safe from being beaten by his father. And their father beat these boys every day, multiple times a day. And Hart took the most abuse from that. But Hart Mackenzie is so sexy and so broken, and he's just everything that sets my heart pitter-patter for a man who's trying to make it good. So I love him. You should read this series. You should read this book. They are all on Audible Escape right now. If you're interested in that, you should definitely check out this series. Next, I recently read Lord of Scoundrels by Loretta Chase. This is considered kind of a classic. This is about Jessica and Dane. Jessica has went to Paris to get her brother back, basically. So I'll show you up close of this. Her brother has gotten in with kind of a rough crowd, and the leader of this crowd is Dane, the Lord of Dane, or Duke of Dane, or whatever he's called. And he is a rake hell, and he's really raking the hell. He does whatever he pleases with whoever he pleases, and one of those young sops following after it is Jessica's younger brother. And so she goes to Paris to save him from ruin, and her and Dane come into contact with each other, and it is gasoline to a fire. And they challenge each other and spark off each other, and Dane and her just go round and round, and it's not even the climax, but it's sparked even further by one specific event that happens, which I never want to spoil just when I'm talking about the book, but it's so hard for me because Jessica is amazing, and though she feels this animal attraction for Dane, she refuses to be walked over. She's very smart. She makes no bones about that. She will talk circles round Dane, and Dane, of course, he's very damaged. He was unwanted by his father. He pulled himself up by his bootstraps. He won a place in society by being vicious and brutal and a philanderer. And when Jessica challenges him, it actually all starts with, like, she finds this photograph, or this little, like, this picture that she gets at an antique shop, and she was in there at the same time as him, and he's flirting with her, and while he's flirting with her, he misses out on this miniature, which ends up being gilded in gold. Like, under this crude wooden structure over it, it's like a gilded gold miniature, and he's so angry that he thinks she tricked him on purpose, when really she was just talking to him, and he got distracted, and it's adorable. And so he refuses, unless she'll sell that picture to him, which she ends up offering to give it to him if he will let her brother go. And he's so insulted that she thinks to, like, buy him this way, even though he's willing to buy the picture. But because she's willing to give it to him and not to sell it to him, he's like, no, I'm never going to let your brother go. In fact, I'm going to ruin him more than he was ever going to be ruined before. And it's just so, she's just like, why? Like, I'm not trying to rile you up, but just by being herself, she does. And there's so much more to this. Like, that's just the tippy top of it. But Dane has a lot of darkness in him. He has a lot of things he's struggling with. I put off this book for so long because I was like, there's no way the hype lives up to this book. The hype lives up to this book. I'm putting my stamp on it. I say so. The next book that the hype lives up to the book is Dreaming of You by Lisa Kleypas. I know, I've probably given you 3 recommendations that you've already read before. I know. But this video is basically a chance for me to rant about all my favorite things. So I just read Dreaming of You. Again, I take too long to get to the good stuff. This book is about Derek Craven, the gambling hell owner. The gambling hell owner and ne'er-do-well. And we meet Sarah, who is a writer. And she has written a very popular book that is about a working girl named Matilda. And everyone thinks that this book is based on a real person. And to be honest, it's never really said if this person is just real or not. Sarah says she isn't. But do we know? Is she really real or not? And Sarah comes across Derek when he is getting attacked. His face is getting slashed because of a jealous ex-lover of his. And she saves him basically by shooting one of his attackers because she carries a gun with her. She does her research in the seedy parts of town. And she asks him to let her look around his club as kind of like payment for saving him. And he's like, sure, but don't talk to me and don't be seen by anyone and just hide yourself, basically. And so she goes about endearing herself to everyone who's there. And Dane realizes that he wants her so much. And one night there's a ball that he says she's not allowed to go to. It's not really a ball because he doesn't really have balls at his club, but it's a party, and she dresses up beautifully, and everyone like knows who she is, like, but him, because he doesn't want to know who this is. And they have so, like, the chemistry they've had before that he's been fighting just overflows, and things get steamy and hot. And once he figures out who this is, he's like, you have to go, because I would take you. Like, I would take you. And she currently at this time like has a beau back home, and he's like, I would take you. I want to, and you need to leave. And there's just so much angst in this story. Derek Craven is considered the king of historical romance heroes. I definitely see that. Like, I see that. Why he is in so many people's brains as the best. I haven't sat with this book long enough to put him there yet. There are still some people that I hold kind of equal to him. Maybe that's a video I need to make. I need to list my like historical romance heroes for you guys. But I see why he's there for people, and I can see how in a few more months' time, as I sit with him, that I could feel that way about him. But if you haven't read this book yet, you need to do it. Next, I have Her Ladyship's Companion by Evangeline Collins. Let me show you this. So this book is about Isabel Sterling and Gideon Rosedale. And so Lady Isabel, she is in a arranged marriage because she was caught messing around with a stable boy by her brother. And so her brother quickly got her married off to a Lord Sterling, who is not a great man. And he actually is impotent. So she's still a virgin after being married for like, I think it's 7 years. And he's an angry impotent. He's angry about this. And he takes it out on Isabel that he's not able to have sex with her, even though he couldn't before her. And he's not, you know. But she's one of the most beautiful people in the land, and like in the area. And the reason he was able to marry her is because she was about to be ruined. And he holds that against her for not being beautiful enough, basically. So he's an ass, like we know. So her cousin, who is very French and really a spitfire lady, and I wish there was a book just about her, she gets a male escort for her, which is Gideon Rosedale. So this cousin pays for Rosedale to go stay with Isabel for a 2-week period and do whatever she wants. Whether she just wants a companion for that time, whether she just wants someone to be kind to her, because Isabel has nothing and no one. She's isolated and lonely and still a virgin after being married for 7 years. And Gideon has all his rules. This is very, like I've said, it's a very reverse Pretty Woman situation is what I call it a lot. But Gideon can't help but slowly break all his rules for this woman, because he sees that she's broken, but he sees that she's so ready to just come alive and be happy with the least bit of affection. And they begin this affair that quickly becomes more and is going to have some serious consequences, because Isabel's married and he's a horrible brute and he's big and strong and but it is such a good book. I cried and loved it so much. It was so good. Next, I have another really recent read for me, and that is The Highwaymen by Kerrigan Byrne. This is the first book in the Victorian Rebel series, and I was so happy to finally start it. All of these books are on, I keep wanting to say KU, they are on Audible Escape. This one, of this series. Not all the books I've said. All of the books in this series are on Audible Escape. And, okay, so this book is about Dorian Blackwell, the Blackheart of Benmore, and it's about Farah Mackenzie, who, when Farah was young, she was in love with an orphan named Dugan Mackenzie. And when they were 9 and 10, maybe, or like she was 8 and he was 10, they had a secret marriage ceremony. They hand fast to each other because they loved each other so much. And then Farah was attacked by the priest who like ran the home that they were at, and she went and told Dugan, and Dugan, well, so she had actually stabbed the priest, and then Dugan went and like finished it, and they ran away, and they get caught, and he ends up in Newgate prison as a kid. And she for years is faithful to him, brings food to the prison for him, but eventually she hears that he dies. And so she literally goes into mourning like she's his wife. She keeps his name, and she ends up becoming a secretary and then like stenographer almost for, is it Scotland Yard? I think it's Scotland Yard. And then we have Dorian Blackwell, who was in the same prison as Dugan. And he is a part of a group of men who kind of like ended up running the prison together as they grew up and became really brutal and were willing to do things. And he owes a life debt to Dugan. And so he is willing to, he's been looking for Farah, not knowing that she took the Mackenzie last name, thought her name was something else. And he finally finds her and tells her that he's going to marry her and take care of her for Dugan. But also, this man has a lot of PTSD from war. He hates himself for a lot of the things he's had to do. He's very vicious, he's brutal, he's all the things, and it's amazing and dark. And I have to be so careful about what I say because this is the beginning of a whole series. I am anxiously waiting to continue the series, but I'm trying to finish up some other things first. But I already have the second book, and the newest book of it comes out later this year. There's like 7 books in this series. But this is dark. There's a lot of trigger warnings in this book. There's child assault, child rape is mentioned. The assault of Farah is explained. A lot of it is off page. And some of it is spoken about using kind of more like flowery words, but you know, the point gets across. So that one definitely is super dark. Then I have to talk about The Duke I Tempted by Scarlett Peckham. Again, super shiny. This is the first in the Secrets of Charlotte Street, which I have the other books I haven't read yet, but I can't wait. This is about a submissive hero, and I love it. I love it. We know that because the book starts with him going to see his whipping mistress. He likes to get whipped and other things, and so good. But he is, let's see, what's his name? The Duke of Westmead. He is going back to his family home reluctantly because a lot of bad things happen to him there, and he meets Poppy Havisham, who wants to own her own like nursery, And so she's been saving up money, purchasing her plants, and she wants to do like flower decoration arrangements and things like that. And her and Westmead meet, and there's instant attraction, there's instant sparks, but Poppy never wants to marry because everything she has would belong to her husband, and everything she's earned, everything she's done, she would lose if she did that, which sucks. And she never means to have any more to do with Westmead besides a flirtation, and then they get caught in a compromising position, and Westmead is like, I won't see you ruined. I promise. I will put it in the marriage contract, whatever you want. I will give you everything you want. And though she's still very resistant, she chooses to trust him with this. And he also, like, he's worried, like, his plan is to, because her promise is she wants a child from him, and he needs an heir, so that's great. And they have great sexual chemistry, but he's still missing that piece where he needs that submissive piece for him to like keep control of other aspects of his life. He needs to be able to give it up, which I love BDSM for this. I adore it so much. And we get to see how that starts to get revealed to her, what he might be into, and how there are parts of her personality that get him really excited because he sees parts of her that may match him in that. And it's really, really exciting to see how they may match perfectly in this way. I'm trying to be really vague about it, but if you like it's so angsty, it's really dark, it's really fun, and I can't wait to read like more of the series because I know there is another like semi-submissive guy later on who's actually like a preacher, and he falls for a really experienced woman, which is just so interesting. Like, there's so much angst in these books though. Like, I was worried how it was going to work out, even though you know it's going to work out. And then the last, I have a trilogy I'm going to show you, so I won't talk too long about each one, but I've talked about them a lot, and that is The Hellions of Havisham by Lorraine Heath. I've only read 4 books by Lorraine Heath, and I already know she's going to be a favorite. I've purchased at least 30 of her books. This woman is a machine, and all of her books so far have been so unique. They have nothing like the others that I've read before, and I'm so excited to read more of her. But this series starts off with Falling into Bed with a Duke. I'll give you a little slip cover here. And this is about a girl, Minerva Dodger, who she isn't necessarily a lady or anything like that, but she is from a rich family. And she is tired of being a virgin, and she's tired of trying to get married. So the solution is there's this club that is basically like for women. I mean, men go there too, but the women all wear masks and the men don't. So like the women know who the men are, and the men are never allowed to take the woman's mask off. They're never allowed to ask who the woman is, and if they want to keep at the club, they need to respect these rules. And so, and the men are known because they're not wearing a mask. And so she gets an invitation to this club, and she meets a duke there. And his name is Ash, and he is one of the Hellions of Havisham. And he likes to take photographs. And they aren't necessarily sensual photographs, but he really likes different body parts. Like, he likes feet and hands, and he likes to photograph them. So he wants to photograph her, and she's doesn't want to, and also he finds out that she's a virgin, and he's like, I'm not going to deflower a virgin, but they have lots of other kinds of sexy time, and it's really fun. And it turns out that like he needs a fortune, and she's everything that he needs, but she's not willing, like she doesn't want to give up her freedom either, and she doesn't have to, because her parents will take care of her, and she's not in any hurry for it. And how their love story unfolds is very interesting. Then there is The Earl Takes All, which this book is just fantastical. like, it's so hard to explain this, but this is about twin brothers, and they go on a trip to Africa, and one of them gets mauled by a gorilla. And it is the Earl that it happens to. And he has a wife, a pregnant wife back home, who they've already lost some babies before. And so the brother who's dying asks his other brother if he will be him and take his wife to Switzerland, which he doesn't know what that means. We don't know what that means when we start the book. And so this other brother pretends that he's the one who died and goes back to England pretending to be the Earl. And his best friends know what's going on, and they think that he's a horrible person for doing this. But he's like, I'm only going to do it till the baby's born, and then I'll explain and whatever. But he slowly, well, he's already been half in love with Julia, the wife. And he, of course, just falls more and more in love with him. And you have no idea how this story is going to work out. Lorraine Heath does that in almost every book I've read so far, because how does this work out? But it does, and it's great. And then we have the final book in the series, which is called The Viscount and the Vixen. And this one doesn't have a slipcover. Step back. Why would you do that? 2 step backs and then no. What? And this is about Viscount Locksley and Portia. And now, we've been hearing about Locksley the whole time. He refuses to marry for love because his father married for love, and then when his mother died, which died giving birth to him, he has been mostly crazy all the time. But still, his father, who was mostly crazy, adopted these 3 other boys that we've met, the twin brothers and the guy from the first novel. He'd adopted them all and still managed to be a good father to all of the boys, even though he was half crazy. And this father knows that it's time for his son to marry. So the father sets up a marriage for himself. And when the woman gets there, the son, thinking that this woman tricked his father, she didn't, he steps in to marry the woman instead because of a trick in the betrothal document. And so this woman, who this secret, like, that's up front in the book, is she's pregnant and was hoping to marry an old earl and then pass the baby off as his and not feel bad because he already had an heir, is now married to the heir, and the baby that she's carrying, which is a bastard child, will be the heir. And so she's like, no, I didn't want to trick anyone, and now I'm tricking someone, and oh yeah, I might love him. So, who got her pregnant? Why isn't she with him? And what's going to happen when the Viscount finds out? So, okay, that's enough yakking for me. There are so many historicals that I think are a little bit dark and twisty. I think a lot of older books are. I have not read too many of them, right? Dreaming of You and Lord of Scoundrels are some of the, like, oldest ones that I've read lately. I used to read a lot of older ones, but I have purchased so many of them. So tell me where I should start. Tell me about some darker historicals. Yeah, this was so much fun. I love talking about historicals with you guys. So thank you so much for watching. I put up new videos 3 to 4 times a week, and you can watch some more of them right now. Bye-bye.